For nearly the last year, the 7 investigators have been exposing misconduct inside the Detroit Police Department, leading some officers to be removed from patrol, as well as calls for better accountability. Tonight, Detroit's top cop says he's taking those calls seriously, rolling out a brand new system designed to identify misconduct among officers. And he's talking about it with our 7 investigator, Ross Jones.
Overwhelmingly, the officers on this department do what they're supposed to do. And when you have an outlier, I think it's equally important to hold those officers accountable.
Over the last 9 months, officers who've not been held accountable by the Detroit Police Department have been the focus of our investigations. Cops sued at least a dozen times, some charged repeatedly by prosecutors or accused over and over again of using racist language and excessive force. Because of our investigations, the Detroit Police Department launched some of its own to try to find out which officers on the force today pose the greatest risk to the city and to the department.
And understand, Ross, this is brand new. I think it's state of the art. I haven't found anyone in any other policing agency that's being this proactive.
Chief James White ordered the top to bottom review of the entire 2,600 member police force. And not just a one-time thing, but a new way to continually monitor officers' risky behavior going forward. After our investigations, the department acknowledged that the system it had been using since 2008 to monitor officer misconduct was out of date, missing red flags that allowed too many problem cops to slip through the cracks.
We are talking about risk to the community.
Assistant Chief David LaValle says the department's old system flagged an officer only if he or she racked up repeated misconduct in a short period of time, but it too often missed bad behavior that was stretched out over years or longer. Under the new risk management unit, each officer is given a risk score generated by their number of citizen complaints and discipline, how often they use force, are involved in vehicle chases and vehicle accidents.
It kind of gives us a real-time picture as to the risk activities that they're engaging in right now.
What the department found is that 5% of the force is considered high risk. That's 128 officers on the streets today. Most have been on the force for 5 years or less, and a number, we've learned, were trained or supervised by 2 officers with their own troubled histories. Lieutenant Willie Duncan, who just last year was charged with criminal sexual conduct, and Sergeant William Ziola, who leads the department in complaints and has been sued at least 12 times.
What is alarming is the rate at which some of these officers over the last, say, 2 years are generating these activities compared to the rest of the department.
The goal of the new system is to flag early warning signs in an officer's behavior before bad conduct becomes ingrained.
There's a multiple auto accidents, possible fatals there.
Last week, we revealed how 2 Detroit cops conducted an improper police chase that ended in a young woman's death. Officers deliberately kept their lights and sirens off and attempted to keep their dash cameras off too, in what a sergeant said amounted to a cover-up. You'll find both officers on the high-risk list for conduct that happened before that improper chase. They're now each awaiting discipline that could include termination.
We've made some assignment changes based on risk. We're going to be creating some individualized training opportunities for some people that have hit our risk score. And we're also going to be, preventing some assignments.
DPD plans to change risky behavior through a months-long monitoring period. Each cop on the list will meet at headquarters with an assistant chief or the chief himself, instructed on how their conduct needs to change. A sergeant will accompany them on runs. Their body camera footage will be randomly checked, and they'll go through intensive retraining if needed. If the officer shows a pattern of targeting certain groups, like people of color, then they'll meet with DPD's new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
The work is tough because you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with cultures, and you're dealing with biases.
The goal, says Assistant Chief David LaValle, is not to fire officers, but to change their behavior. But if real progress isn't made...
At some point, I'm sure some officers that participate in this process aren't going to change, and we'll take the appropriate steps at that time.
So if you have a police chief who sides with the police and believes in the blue culture, so to speak, things will slide through the cracks. I believe our current police chief, James White, is not that person.
It's early, but Detroit Police Commissioner Ricardo Moore says he's optimistic the new system will shine a light on Detroit's troubled cops, helping to retrain those open to breaking their bad habits or if they don't, send them packing.
We appreciate you and your reporting for bringing these things out. We want it to be a very functioning police department where we all can be trusted.
If there's a police officer in Detroit or anywhere in the state you think we should look into, send us an email at tips@wxyz.com. From the newsroom, I'm Ross Jones, 7 Action News.